Good morning. This is DebraVWilson. It's the 23rd of August 2016. It's 800 hours and 5 minutes, and that's GMT minus 6. And I'm just outside of Janesville, Wisconsin. This morning I'm literally outside, so if you hear background noise, that's what it is. I wanted to take advantage of this bright and crisp morning whilst I recorded my first of many podcasts in this series. And a little bit about this series. What I'm going to do is, whilst I'm working on my master's degree and looking at peace building, constructs of peace, constructs of security, I'm going to do a continual study on my own and examination of state security models and security models emanating from the bottom up, from the masses, from the people. Now, at this point, I should step back a little and say that this podcast, the first in a series, again, one is hoping, I'm calling it Security is Much Like the U.S. Tax Code. Let me explain. In the U.S. tax code, money is not money. The U.S. tax code looks at the source of income and to determine how to treat it. By treating it, I mean taxing it. For instance, amongst many labels, I'm an accountant. And as an accountant in a given year, I have had income from a corporation. And that income has been reported on a W-2. And that W-2 lists the amount of money the corporation paid me, the taxes they deducted from my paycheck, and those would include federal taxes, state taxes. Within the federal taxes, they go into my Social Security account. They might also, the W-2 might also include deductions taken out of my check for, say, health insurance. In the same year, I might also have income. An income source as a contract worker. So a company or an NGO may have hired me to do a consulting project for them, and that income, if it reaches a benchmark, is reported in a 1099. And that 1099 would reflect the wages, the monies paid to me by that entity in that given year. And typically, on the 1099s I've received, I've never had prior deductions taken out of those funds. So it would just be the income that I earned from my consulting job. And then I might have income from investments, and those investments could be as commonplace as a bank account. So it could be interest earned from a savings account or a checking account, and that would be considered by the U.S. tax code, the IRS, Internal Revenue Service, passive income. So each of those three incomes could potentially be looked at differently by the U.S. tax code and treated differently. By that I mean taxed at a different rate. The similarities between the U.S. tax code and security is that security is not defined as security. It's sourced. And how it's treated, it's based on the source of the discussion, sourced of the modeling of the security. For instance, security emanating from the state, we typically all agree that's a security model. But security modeling, questioning, and discussion that emanate from women, well, that's a women's issue. Security modeling emanating and discussion emanating from marginalized groups and marginalized groups, you will have to contextualize from place to place, typically is not viewed as discussions of security. It's typically viewed as discussions of that marginalized group. For instance, in the U.S., discussions of security by African Americans is an African American issue. Discussions of security of Israeli Arabs is an Israeli Arab discussion. Security discussions from British Muslims is a British Muslim discussion. Security issues globally emanating from the LGBTQ community. Those are queer issues, queer discussions. The list could go on and on and on. The point and the position I'm taking in these podcasts is that all discussions of security are security discussions, and all have the potential to impact the larger security modeling coming from the state. I also want to mention how I conceptualize security and peace. The degree I'm seeking on paper has the name peace in it, and the discussion and security, be it peace and conflict or peace and security. From my perspective, there is no difference between peace and security. They're the same. I think and believe that peace is a feminization and a feminized construct, feminized being in quotes, of security. And I think security is a masculinized, in quotes, construct and representation of peace. So I look at peace and security as the same, but simply a presentation, a conceptualization, and an implementation through a prism of ideologies. Security, peace. I view them as the same. Again, I will try to have these podcasts on a weekly basis. They're a work in progress. I'm still relatively new to being on social media, and I'm going to play the generational card. I'm a baby boomer, and this isn't a natural space for me to talk into my iPad, so it is a work in progress. But I think the discussion of security and peace and whose voices we hear and how we conceptualize those voices, it's very important. I think it's timely. I think there's a great deal of discussions to be had. I think because of social media, I think more voices have come into the space, and more voices have the opportunity to be heard. And I'd like to take a look at those voices, and I'd like to discuss those various concepts of security and see how they impact the whole. Thank you for listening to my maiden podcast. And again, this is DebraVWilson. It's the 23rd of August, 2016. I'm literally just outside of Janesville, Wisconsin. Thank you very much.